Kaduri Murungi, Clerk of the Senate, Deputy Clerk of the Senate, Host Senator, Senator Tabitha Karanja, Session Chair, Senator Enoch Wambua, Honorable Senators, Development Partners, Resource Persons, staff of the Senate, and all protocols observed. Ladies and gentlemen, good afternoon. I believe I might be at least the presentation that stands between us and lunch, even though tea was not too long ago. But I'm happy to be here and happy to honor the invitation to share with you. And the original title of my presentation was Profiling the Senate in the Media, Effectively Engaging the Media in Selling Your Legislative Agenda, with a focus on new media. But I have changed my title with your, and I'll plead to change it to the 3 habits of highly effective social media senators. The 3 habits of highly effective social media senators. And that's really what I'm here to share and to present a counterpoint that builds on my senior chair of the Editors Guild, Mr. Churchill. So if we start, and I take the cue from our session chair, Senator Wambua, then you have started a race with 2027 in mind. And if I present to you the social media or the digital battleground, if you would, I would suggest to you that at this very moment, every single one of you senators have what I would call a Google CV. If I search for your first name and your last name, I will find this Google CV. And I'll not be the only one. For many of the electorate, some 15, 17 million now, as I'll share some statistics, and potentially in 2027, some 20 plus million strong, they will increasingly receive their news through their phones. In fact, many of you throughout this morning, even now, you might be on a device as you listen to me, because that's the power of technology in shaping the information we get. So I would say search what people find about you, your Google CV, this digital reputation, is somewhat of a battleground. It's a place that you can cultivate and shape how people, the media, the voters who elected you, or the party that has nominated you, and whatever constituency that you advocate for, you can shape their perception. And the media will be core in the coverage of you, because that will be part of what's there. And so will the bloggers too, or people who write in an unsolicited way, without necessarily inviting your comment or your point of view. Social media is another battleground, if we could say. And here there is a lot that I'll say and I'll share with you shortly. And in addition to this, there is also messaging apps. These are WhatsApp, Telegram, Messenger. These are key spaces where people are engaging one-to-one or in groups. Also a key constituency that you must consider. And lastly, YouTube, and to a greater extent, online audio, or online, you might call them podcasts, or those who stream the radio through the internet and not necessarily through the FM. That is another aspect to consider. So, Honorable Senators, I'm here to persuade you just 3 points which I will unpack. The first is, I want to say that the 3 habits of the highly effective social media senator, the first is they build a virtual constituency. They build a virtual constituency. Secondly, they build a voice on causes they care about, causes their constituents care about, causes citizens care about. That's the second thing, the second habit they do. And thirdly, they build a vehicle for their agenda, their legislative agenda, their development agenda, and obviously there's the constitutional mandate of senators. And I would plead with you that this is my take on what the future, not just the present, says on the role of the Senate and each one of you as senators. And not just in your individual capacity, but in your office with whomever is handling communications for you and working alongside you. So if we look to just the platforms I spoke of earlier, you see places like TikTok there, right? You see places like Facebook and places like that. And I'll spend some time just briefly discussing platforms, just to share with you a bit of this virtual constituency we've just described. So if you take the country today, Facebook in Kenya is larger than the population of the following counties put together: Nairobi, Kiambu, Nakuru, Kakamega, Bungoma, Meru, Kilifi, and Machakos. All put together, that is the size of Facebook. Some 16 million strong in Kenya. These are the monthly active users, according to Facebook in April of this year, 2022. And to me, if I'm asking you to consider how best to engage there, you may have a page by this point. My question to you would be groups. So people are already self-organizing in your respective counties in Facebook groups. Young people are organizing. Some civil society organizations may organize too. And people with a general interest, even the diaspora, will self-organize and try to keep in touch with what's happening at home. Are you present there? Are you listening there? And are you finding a way to participate? Because you have your space as an honorable senator, but there are also these other spaces elsewhere that give you the chance to build this virtual constituency of Kenyans, not only here and the ones online, but also in the diaspora. And I believe we have had the diaspora in particular focus the last few weeks. Now, if I can tell you about WhatsApp for a brief moment. If we take WhatsApp, that is also a key platform. For many of us, it was critical in the campaign. You mobilized, organized, strategized, and informed your teams and many people on the ground through WhatsApp. Don't neglect it, continue to use it, whether it's the status or whatever aspect you want to use to reach and engage people there. And it's great that now there's about 512 people that you can add to a group, maybe for better and for worse, because maybe many of us might have many groups on mute at this point, now that you have arrived in the Senate. Kenyans on Twitter, I don't know what to say about them, but they are one of the most tricky, right? They can be quite cynical. They can be very sarcastic. They can be very antagonistic, if I could say that. Some would say that this is the most negative of the social networks. It's hard to get a compliment or a comment. Generally, you may get complaints. That's quite likely. But Kenyans on Twitter have quite a lot of sway, and a lot of journalists are on Twitter as a platform. And they spend time there. And that's why for some of you senators, you might attest that even a tweet you send, not directed at anyone in particular, ends up being a news story elsewhere or being covered in the mainstream media. And you might not have intended it to be so. You didn't write it as a press statement or press release, and yet it is carried on a national broadcast as a statement of fact coming from yourself. Some of you might struggle also with impersonators, and I think now as elected officials, I can't speak for any of the platforms, but I know they are working to try to ensure that verification takes place, to make sure that your profile is you and represents you, and you're not misrepresented there online. You have an electorate who has chosen you, and ultimately they are voters in that constituency where you represent, or if you're nominated, you may pick and choose or take the national stage. But ultimately there's people who want to follow you. So when I speak about building a virtual constituency, this is the idea. I want to speak just briefly with the slides about what Kenyans do with their mobile data. And the idea here is, this is irrespective of whether they engage in anything political. My team and I did some research a few years ago and published this in 2019. If you give an everyday person 100 megabytes or 100 gigabytes, meaning if you take the quote that's here, mobile data or megabytes are as important a currency as cash or airtime or mobile money, because people spend their megabytes in different places online. The first thing they do is they search. They search using Google. They search using Android phones. That's the preeminent way they interact. Secondly, sports. Not just watching and viewing and interacting with football and other sports, but sports betting in particular, because in the last 10 years, 3 out of the 5 most Googled words are either sports betting companies for 2 of them, or one is an actual, I guess, way of keeping up with your sports bet in a way. So while this is understated, it is a massive national pastime that a lot of people spend their data and their time and attention on. The third is social media. I'll speak briefly about that as I seek to bring my remarks to a close shortly. The other one, no one likes to talk about this, but adult websites are also there and ranked quite high. It's like that in almost every country we've seen across Africa. And the last one is stories. So YouTube, and generally with content, people following you, and as I'll come to say just now, seeking out your voice and your views on current affairs or county affairs or whatever it is you have decided to speak on. So if we just take a quick way of speaking to the virtual constituency here, for me, as I've said, for Facebook, the emphasis here is on exploring groups. On WhatsApp, it's similar. It's what ways will you use groups to shape your message or reach constituents and engage them. And then ultimately for somewhere like Twitter, even though there might be a couple arrows sent your way, it's to get on there and just slowly start to build up this virtual constituency, as some of your other colleagues in the Senate have done over the last few years and continue to do. If we look now towards your voice, lending your voice for causes, the second habit of highly effective social media senators, here what I would say is that you have this opportunity to now speak and drive key points and your individual perspective. So do you want to keep it to strictly the law, or do you want to speak and advocate on behalf of a particular segment of people, either in your constituency or one who you don't feel is being spoken for? That voice of yours matters, and people are waiting to hear from you and want you to get more familiar with speaking. Now, I know that in this room there'll be perhaps 3 types of senators I'm speaking to. One might engage little to none at all with social media. Right? The second might interact a little to moderately, and possibly through someone employed on your communications team or in your office. And then there are those who basically will frequently engage and directly engage by themselves. And this is all a learning opportunity for you to look and learn from the senators around you and figure out your voice for the causes that you care about, for the constituents that you want to build online. And I think for me, in summing this up, I would say that you want to show what you care about. And this is where you just decide what you want to share as concerns and areas that you'll focus on. You want to speak to matters of your county, ultimately, especially if you've been elected by voters there. And then lastly, regardless of whether nominated or elected, you want to engage with citizens online and build up your virtual constituency and learn to find your voice over time, whether you're having things ghost written for you or you are doing this by yourself and engaging directly. Try it out and see how far you get. Last but not least is a vehicle for your agenda. The third habit of highly effective senators is building social media as a vehicle for your legislative agenda. So for here, ultimately, there's a question on your role. How do you see your role? What are your priorities? Right? Because you get the chance to advocate for people, and you can choose a legislative focus or an area of interest. Is it small or medium-sized businesses? Is it food security, agriculture, water and sanitation, peace and security, right? Education, healthcare, the youth? You get the chance to choose that. And you take your role now to then say and tell people either what you'll do or even sum up what you're learning here. As session chair had said, we have 5 days that we've spent here. How are you synthesizing what you're learning and perhaps sending a message back of the parts that are standing out to you the most and what you're most keen to learn and to bring back to the voters that elected you and to the party and the constituency that has brought you here. Secondly, your party. We have to recognize that you may want to affirm what your party leader is saying. You may want to echo the party's position, or you meant to bring your own individual perspective. And thirdly, the people. How can you build online public participation on social media? Yes, you will receive negative comments. Prepare for that. And you don't have to respond to them all, but being present there matters to people, that you're accessible. So to sum this up, for me, it's, as I said at the top, the 3 habits of highly effective senators. One is build your virtual constituency now and all the way to 2027. And you might not be somebody who uses TikTok much, but there will be a lot more voters by 2027 who will. And it's your choice what level of engagement you choose to have there. Facebook is the preeminent one now. Twitter is a very influential one, but TikTok is the fastest growing, just as an example, and you can get help and support to build this. Secondly, your voice on causes. What do you care about, and what do the people who elected you or nominated you care about? What will you speak on? And lastly, what's the vehicle for your legislative or development agenda? Chronicle your journey. And for me, I'm quite keen to see, in a year's time, who amongst you will have done the opportunity to build this and be known online or simplify the work of the Senate. Those are opportunities available to you. So I have a quote to end. It's not too different from Senator Ambua here, and it's from John Maynard Keynes, where the difficulty lies not in new ideas, but escaping the old ones. So I'll leave you with that and appreciate you for the opportunity. Thank you.
Can we kindly applaud him better?